Hi, welcome to the second video for my development of an Untitled Sonata, a third-person action-adventure game that I've been working on as part of my final university project. Building from the last video, I decided that it would be worth devoting my efforts to one specific area at a time, as this way I can complete each milestone individually, which may help me in the future. Therefore, the focus of this video is the mechanics of the game, for which I have a working prototype. I will display and go through this shortly. I began by writing down the ideas for the mechanics on paper and then proceeded to draw out diagrams for how certain ones would work. These mechanics were then discussed in a proposal presentation. The feedback gained from the presentation was incredibly useful, as it allowed me to see my ideas from an outside perspective and adjust areas based on others' opinions. The core mechanic ideas I ended up deciding on were firing attacks, dodging, the character movement system, the enemy movement system, enemy attack AI for both the grunt enemies and the boss enemy, weapon switching, health and healing, and an audio cueing system. Following this, I implemented the mechanics into a game level where I could test them without risk to the final project of the game. A video of this test level and me testing the mechanics can be seen currently. In the previous video, I mentioned the MDA framework. I was able to follow the MDA framework whilst implementing mechanics and testing them within my game. I could view it from the mechanic point of view, which is the more technical viewpoint, as well as the aesthetic point of view, which is the responses the player has to the game whilst using its mechanics. Testing the game allowed me to conclude not only these areas, but also allowed me to view the dynamic section of the framework firsthand, as I can watch others who tested my game interact with the mechanics and watch the mechanics react to their input, whether that reaction was good or bad. Testing the mechanics allowed me to adjust values where needed and understand what would work from a player feel perspective. One of these influences when designing these mechanics was Steve Swink's game feel. Specifically, the section where Swink talks about games as an extension of the senses. This was something I wanted the players of An Untitled Sonata to feel, and so testing allowed me to figure out whether I had achieved this goal. I was also able to look at the nav mesh system that Unity has, and begin looking at how that would work inside a test level. For the audio cueing system, I had to request the help from another member of my university course. They had a lot more programming knowledge than I did, and upon explaining and detailing my idea, they immediately began coming up with different ways to make it happen. There were also mechanics that I decided to change. The main change was the combat system. I originally intended to have a close-range combo-based system, but upon talking to peers it was decided that a system like that was quite far outside the scope that I needed to have for this project, so I opted for a simpler ranged attack system instead. Healing was something I added in during testing, as I realised if the player got damaged during a fight, they would have no way to regain that health. For a game that isn't supposed to be too difficult, this would make the game near impossible to complete, so I added in weapon switching and healing instead, making the combat much more balanced. The image shown on the screen is a light diagram for one of the puzzles I plan to feature in this game. For this puzzle, the player must locate a target and hit it. The difficulty will depend on the size of the target. If we look at an example from the game itself, we can see an incredibly easy version of this puzzle where the player must shoot a sign to create a ramp to progress. This allows for more creative use of the environment, adding something different to each level. For the next video I plan to discuss my experience creating the 2 game levels that will be included in the vertical slice, and I will be greyboxing these levels and planning them out on paper before I create them in Unity. For this video on mechanics, that's everything.